Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Minnesota Wild heading into this year's NHL trade deadline. So, the Minnesota Wild are in an interesting spot, and I think there's a couple of different things they can do here. But overall, I think it's going to be a fairly quiet deadline for the Wild, and I hesitate when I say that, but let's take a look at what they've got. So their trade block is kind of interesting. They have a couple of guys that should be on your radar here that could be moved. They have their first round pick, their second round pick, and two prospects that I don't really think they want to move, but if they're willing to make a big move, it's going to be the price, because these are their highest regarded prospects left, and they are Marco Rossi and Carson Lambos. Both former first round picks of the Minnesota Wild, and guys that, you know, I think Carson Lambos has a spot on this team, but Marco Rossi, as the years go on here, I think less and less likely he has a spot on this team. And especially if you're going to acquire a big name top six center, wink wink, nudge nudge, then Marco Rossi becomes expendable and could probably be part of the package going the other way. So when I look at the Wild here, what do they need? Well, there's two different things that I think we're looking at for the Wild. I think for the most part, their defense and goaltending, obviously, with Philip Gustafsson and Fleury, I think they're good. I think it's more the forward side of things. If they can add another top six forward, and in particular, a top six center, I think the Minnesota Wild would be more than happy to acquire that. You know, one of the biggest criticisms for the Wild over the last couple of years has been, yeah, they've got a decent team. They've got Kaprizov. They've got some good defensemen up and coming. But they don't have that really good center core that can match up with other teams' best center cores around the league. And that's why they ultimately have been flaming out in the playoffs. And I think that's definitely true for the most part. And when you look at some of the names that have been thrown around over the last couple years, right? Tomas Hertl in years past before he signed, and other big name centers, you know, there isn't that many options this year, unfortunately. So unless there's one name in particular that ends up going to the Wild, unfortunately, I think we're going to keep waiting a little bit longer for that. And what we're looking at here in terms of their wingers, there's a couple of names. Brock Besser, who has been heavily tied, and James Van Riemsdyk. And these aren't the big names that I think a lot of Wild fans are really all that excited for, but these are the names that I think if they want to make a hockey trade, say maybe trading Matt Dumba straight up for Besser or JVR, then maybe that deal could actually work. If you want to look at maybe trading some of these assets that I mentioned, well, there's a little bit more opportunity in terms of a bigger trade. So, a couple of guys, specifically centers, oh man, bad voice crack. A couple of centers in particular that I think they could look at. Kevin Hayes and Ivan Barbashev are guys that I think could be really interesting. I think Hayes, with the way things have kind of just dismantled in Philadelphia, his trade value is actually very low. They could probably get him at a very discounted price and actually raise his value in Minnesota. But I don't think that's much of an upgrade over some of the guys they already have in Gaudreau and Joel Eriksson Ek. With that said, I think Barbashev is another good addition, but again, he's not that prime-time top six center, right? He's good, but again, is he that much of an upgrade over the other guys? Ryan O'Reilly, I think that's a really interesting one, but again, his career, he really has regressed this season, so how much are you paying for him, and is he worth it on a rental deal? Maybe that's more of just patchwork and not really a long-term fix. Now, this is the one that's going to generate a lot of attention because the Detroit Red Wings down the road have a pending UFA center that they're having contract negotiations with, and I don't expect him to be up for trade and even available, but if Dylan Larkin for any reason is available, the Minnesota Wild have to do their damnedest to pick him up. I think he is the best player available and the best fit available for the Detroit Red Wings and the Minnesota Wild right now. And what's good here, the Minnesota Wild could give up Rossi, Lambos, their first and their second round pick, and I think you're okay with that. I think you give up all four of those assets to pick up Dylan Larkin. And you do that, you wipe your hands clean and you say, we're fine with that because we have Dylan Larkin. And even if it's not a sign and trade, I think you make that move today. because that is how good Dylan Larkin can be, and he automatically fixes your issue. You've got Joel Eriksson Ek and Dylan Larkin as your 1-2 combination down the middle. It doesn't get better than that. Now, is that realistic? No. That's my kind of fantasy thinking and head in the clouds. But nonetheless, if you really want to talk about making a move at the deadline, that is your statement move. Other than that, it's probably not going to be the really nice, big headliner move. It's going to be a Boeser or JVR or a Barbashev or even a Kevin Hayes, right? And honestly, I think O'Reilly's in the conversation, but I think the Blues don't want to trade their captain to a divisional rival. But nonetheless, that could be on the table. With that said, realistically, I think they give up. I could see them making a move here, Dumba for Boeser in a 1-for-1, and maybe they trade that second round pick for a JVR or a Kevin Hayes or an Ivan Barbashev, and that's kind of it. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Minnesota Wild going into this year's NHL trade deadline? I think obviously the apparent need is a top 6 center, and maybe they pick up a center that has some term under him, right? And I think that's something that could be considered as well, but I think the Dylan Larkin idea is just a perfect one. It's just, I don't know if Steve Yzerman is really ready to make that move yet, and I think that's something that, if it were to happen, would go into the summer, but let me know your guys' thoughts. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time.